Yo, 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 welcome to the Outside the Box podcast. I think, as the young people say, this show is lit, but we mostly talk about stuff, so it's lit on fire. I don't know how that saying works. Anyway, I'm Jacques Slade, and I enjoy this show. I've got two really great guys on this show that really keep the show going. They're the guys you'll probably listen to more than you listen to me. So I'm gonna start it off with my main man, Brandon.
What's going on, everybody? Brandon Edler, content manager, Finish Line. Really appreciate everybody checking out these episodes and keeping us with comments and social on YouTube, whatever, so we can make sure that we're doing the right show for you guys. I'm going to kick it over to our guy, Nick Engvall.
Hey, what's up, guys? Nick Engvall. Definitely appreciate you guys tuning in and listening. And any feedback, definitely hit us up. Twitter, Instagram, YouTube comments. We'll check it all out and hopefully, keep this entertaining for you.
Yeah, I'm gonna just go ahead and say it. That intro I did was really awkward, but we'll keep it just for sake because we don't want to start over. So let's talk basketball. I feel like the sneaker world for basketball is insane right now. There's so much good product, and there's product that's like $100, and there's product that's $200. It's just like an insane amount of good quality sneakers right now. And I feel like all the brands are really kind of like pumping on all cylinders when it comes to basketball. Now, both of you guys have obviously retail experience. I'm more of a media guy. And I know you can't really disclose any like direct information, but is basketball doing as well as it seems to be doing from what I see?
It just depends what shoe it is. I mean, overall, I feel like actually basketball's kind of been slipping a little bit just because there's so many colorways of so many different sneakers. You're seeing stuff sit on shelves a lot longer. Overall, though, I feel like it's doing fairly strong, especially the entry model, signature line stuff, like the Kyrie coming in at the price that it did, the Curry being very affordable. I think those are shoes that if you see brands continue to go in that trend, they're going to do really well. But the stuff that's higher, the $160, $180, $200 ballpark, yeah, those have been struggling a little bit more. And, you go into Kicksteals and other affiliate sites like that, and you see that those shoes get marked down for about $150 after a few months. And, very few of them are selling out the way that they did a couple of years ago. So it's kind of a yes and no. Overall, basketball's still doing very, very strong. But, yeah, there's a lot of shoes that aren't pushing units the way they did a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think that there's just so much out there right now that and you've got to look at all the pieces to that puzzle where Nike ID even takes a little bit of that away because so many people are like, well, I can get a Kyrie and I'm only going to buy so many shoes a year, so I may as well buy a color that I want and make my own. So it's definitely an interesting time. And I think that, overall, I think, it's still the absolute biggest part of the footwear business. Running shoes are important, but I think basketball still drives, the business for the Foot Lockers, the Finish Lines, Foot Actions, Eastbays, all these companies.
Well, I definitely agree, Nick, exactly. I think you're head on. Basketball is king. When you look at like the quarterly earning reports from the brands or retailers, basketball is always a big piece of how well everybody's doing. If you take a look at, the gap between Adidas and Nike, Adidas is doing just fine in a lot of lifestyle stuff. Soccer, they're very strong, but basketball is where they really, really need to catch up if they want to be competitive with them. And that's a piece where Under Armour is actually what they've done with the Curry and a little bit of the other stuff that they have on their basketball line. They've been able to close a little bit of the gap. I mean, when we're talking about Nike, closing the gap is pretty big number, but still, at least they're making it more competitive than it was 5 years ago. But yeah, basketball is definitely king.
Yeah, absolutely.
So does a brand need to have all right, let's talk about this in two categories. Let's talk about the 100 to 150 and then the 150 and up sneakers. Let's start with the 150 and up. Now that market seems to be dominated at this point basically by Nike. Everything that's over $150 for the most part are all Nike shoes with the exception of I think the D Rose 6 is going to be 150 or maybe it's 140. But maybe it's 150. So those shoes are suffering because kids aren't buying those like they used to. So that means KD, LeBron, Kobe, and Derrick Rose for the most part are the ones that aren't selling. They're not selling through as other like guys like Kyrie, guys like Steph Curry, guys like John Wall. But then I also think like there's Chris Paul in that area. There's Melo, though I don't think we haven't really heard anything about Melo's sneakers really in the news lately. Um, but for the 150 to the $200 area, are those shoes that much better than the shoes that are 110, 120, 125 for the Curry?
Personally, I don't think so. I think you're paying for that that trend or that player's you know um, I don't know, cool factor. But I think there's a lot of personal preference involved in all of that. Like if you're a fan of LeBron, you buy LeBrons. If you're a fan of D Rose, you buy D Roses. And like I think the D Rose shoes, at one point jumped into the 160 range, and then they brought it back down because I don't think that the although Adidas is really popular right now, it just doesn't make sense for them to try to play in that world unless they're playing on the lifestyle side with Kanye. Because to me, like, and like not even just Kanye, they have ridiculous amounts of high end collaborations, which is what makes their lifestyle brand so powerful, in my opinion. But like with Kyrie's, Curry, all those guys, I think you're paying to kind of be associated with that. And if I'm Under Armour, I know that I'm not going to go try to compete in the basketball segment against LeBron's price point because LeBron is 13 years established as the man when it comes to basketball shoes now. Like Kobe was in there for half of that, but there's no question that LeBron is the pinnacle player and the pinnacle shoe when it comes to basketball shoes, in my opinion. And, like you can look at guys like a Kyrie and see, okay, well, he's not quite LeBron status, and he doesn't have the massive influence, the massive following, the massive endorsements because they're not quite to that level. And, with a guy like Curry, he's maybe the more attainable, more relatable, normal guy because he's not, 6'8" and 250 pounds. He's like 6 foot, maybe, if you're giving him some extra credit. And, he's just really just a skinny kid that plays basketball. So I think those things play into it. I do think that it's kind of interesting that you have guys like, James Harden, John Wall, although John Wall has his own shoe, like, and I think Harden with this transition to Adidas will eventually have his own shoe as well. But those guys, in my opinion, have a lot more influence than a lot of brands and a lot of retailers give credit to because their price point of their shoe is at that $100, $120 mark. And it's still like a hard thing for that 18, 19-year-old kid or his parents to say, cool, we're going to drop $200 for LeBron, like, or 250 or whatever that is. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, Nick, I think you're definitely spot on with a lot of that. A lot of it's, who their favorite player is. I know when I was in junior high and high school, I had to have the latest Penny, I had to have the latest Iverson. It just depended, it didn't matter what the price point was. I just had to have that. Thankfully, back then it was a lot better than it is now. A lot of these kids, if LeBron's their favorite player, they're going to ante up and they're going to pay that extra money to get it. Is the shoe better? Yeah, it is. I mean, you look at the technology on a lot of these shoes that are $180, $200, and it is better. I mean, it's like, going from a Volkswagen to an Audi. You're paying for that difference between a Kyrie and a LeBron. Does the average basketball player need it, especially at the high school, collegiate type level? Probably not. I mean, if Wilt Chamberlain can drop 100 buckets in Chuck Taylor's, then I think, the average 14-year-old can do just fine in a $90 performance shoe. So, it's just the cool factor. It's who their favorite player is. But, at the end of the day, that's the reason a lot of these $110, $125 shoes are doing a lot better is because, it's performance-wise, it's perfectly fine. It's going to hold up just the way that it should. And a lot of these players that are attached to that shoe are premium players just as well.
Yeah, it's weird to me that, like, those guys that are in the 110, 120, 125, like, those guys are really great players. It's not like they're like nobodies. Like John Wall's a beast. Curry's obviously a beast. And like Kyrie is, is a beast. Like there's no way to Like these guys are, pretty much unstoppable in the court. They go in nearly, every single game, but their price point is so. I'm happy you guys said that. It's so attainable to a kid that's watching basketball or that loves basketball and is like, hey, I can actually get Kyrie's shoes. I can be a part. I can be a part of that story or part of that history. Same thing with Curry. Like Curry's story is such an underdog story, and I hope that Under Armour takes note of the presence that he has and doesn't start jacking up the price of his shoes year after year. I mean, I understand going up maybe $5, something like that, but there's some shoes like I think we all know the story of it. We all felt like KD was going to stay around that. I think his first one was $85. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it was under 100. I can't remember exactly. And wasn't he really adamant about keeping it under like that $120 price point?
Yeah, it started at 85, and now he's $100 above that price point right now for his shoes, and not to take anything away from KD's star, but like $100 in a matter $100 price jump in a matter of what we're on the KD 8. Yeah, we're on the 8, right? Yeah, 8 in a matter of 8 years, $100 price jump. Like that's a big jump for in 8 years. So I don't know. I wish there.
Well, I think there's a few things. I think there's a few things that factor into that too that a lot of times consumers don't really think about. Like you've got to figure that like Kobe is kind of about done. I don't know that he can carry a signature model after he's done. Like he's obviously an incredible player and has had some really great shoes both with Nike and Adidas. But I think if you're looking at it from a business perspective, Nike has to make up for that gap that, hey, Kobe's going to start to fall off. So, the shoes, we see it. Like you can get a lot of the Kobe shoes in the outlets on a regular basis now. And, like KD kind of fills in that gap, so to speak, as talking, profit. So, talking about like the money side of it, I guess. But I think it's also interesting too, like not to run off on another subject, but I think it's interesting that like back in, like you look at like back in the late 90s, you had a lot of brands that were at that middle of the road price point. Obviously everything was a little less expensive back then, but like if you think of like a shoe like the And One, Tai Chi, or maybe the Starbury, which Starburys might be coming back now, and honestly, like, I don't know that, like there's a lot of profit on the other side of things. And we know that as consumers, but we don't really understand how much profit. Like you're buying something at the outlet for what you think is 50% off or on one of the discount sales from the retailers. There's still a ton of profit in that shoe for both the retailer and the manufacturer. So to think of that and kind of put that into perspective, like you're paying for all the marketing, you're paying for all those commercials because you want that storyline, you want that cool factor, and you want to feel like part of LeBron's story almost, or part of Kyrie's story. And so that definitely plays into it, like especially with Nike, because a lot of their technologies, have been things that they've worked on for years and to get to this point. Where with like maybe an Under Armour, I think the technologies might not be as prominent or as developed, but they definitely, still have to spend the money to figure out how it works and where it works and how they can use it.
Agreed. Now, speaking of these professional athletes, for us, it was a big deal for players to wear their shoes on the court. Brandon, I'll toss this to you, Brandon. Do you feel like that's still necessary for guys to have the shoes on the court?
Yeah, I do. I mean, we saw how big of a deal it was with the LeBron 11 that he wasn't wearing it and what that meant. There was endless articles on it. And, I don't know if that's a particular reason, but that shoe didn't sell as well as some of his previous models did. So it's tough to know if that's the exact reason. But yeah, I think the average kid, whether he's, just coming up in 5th, 6th grade basketball, junior high or what, they like having that connection. Like Nick said, they want to be a part of that story. They want to be like, yeah, I rock the same shoes that, LeBron dropped 60 in or whatever that looks like. Like I remember even a couple of years ago, I would have probably been 26 or so. I bought the LeBron 7 PSs because I thought they were going to be the first shoes he won his title in. The one that kind of looked like the Concord 11s where they stripped a lot of the fat out of it. I mean, to me, I thought that would be a cool thing to have that down the road, have the shoe that he won his first title in. So I think it's still important. I don't think it's the end all be all deciding factor for a lot of people when they buy the shoes. But, how's it a signature shoe if the guy's not even wearing it when he's performing night in, night out?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think there's a lot of examples of that over the years too. You look at the Under Armour Prototype 2 that Brandon Jennings wore, and that shoe was never released to the public. And then after the fact, he put up 55, and they released the double nickel version of it to kind of a not really super limited or anything, but like through Foot Lockers and such. And that shoe had a story and it was great. I definitely had to get him because it was like, cool, this guy's finally we're finally getting to see Under Armour basketball for the first time and have access to it, but also the story behind it is really awesome. So, I mean, I think that it's not a part of the selling and the marketing of the shoe anymore, but I still think as a kind of as a sneaker enthusiast, collector, whatever you want to call it, that's still definitely, important. Like, my friend Chad, Sneaker Galactus on Instagram, he's an insane collector. He has a ridiculous amount of shoes, but he collects them and he knows the stories of every shoe. It's like, this guy did this and that. And, that's what to me is like the root of all of our passion for footwear and sneakers is you take it back to Jordan flying from the free throw line in the Jordan 3, or winning the dunk contest in the 2s, or the Boston game in the 1s. Those are the things that at the root of all of this, for the most part, we're still there. There is that element of the newer, younger kid that's getting into it that he's watching social media and he's more influenced by that. And that's why you see a lot of effort into getting in front of people and getting the colors out there and that. But I still think there is an element that, of a certain significance to what the players do in them and what they, which ones are worn and which ones are not.
Okay, so I'm going to throw a bone in things here a little bit. So we've been talking about basketball shoes this whole time, and none of us have mentioned the Jordan signature line when it came to talking about basketball shoes. Why is that?
I mean, I think it just doesn't really have that connection that it used to when he was on the court. I mean, even when they try to put faces on it like D Wade or Westbrook or whoever, it just didn't feel the same. It didn't feel like a true Jordan. It still, to me, to me now, it feels just as much like a Superfly 3 or, a Carmelo 8. All that to me is kind of in the same ballpark because Mike's not making those moments in that shoe anymore. And we saw the kind of season that Westbrook had last year, even when he was wearing a lot of the signature stuff, and it just doesn't resonate with you in the same fashion. So, I'm really excited to see what they're going to do with the 30. Jordan Brand's going to come out and do something crazy. I thought last year what they did with the 29 was really innovative. I thought it was an amazing performance shoe, but Mike not wearing it, it's not really a Jordan shoe in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I also think that I'm a big Chris Paul fan, and I have quite a few of his signature shoes. But I also think that Westbrook is not the pinnacle guy that Jordan was or is, and the price point of the Jordan signature model has been pretty high. So even though I would say the economy is in a good spot for the footwear business, and people are definitely everybody's doing well in the footwear business for the most part. It's definitely something that price point and the fact that you don't have the best player in the game attached to it is tough. It's tough to think of that, because personally I'd rather spend 140, 150 on a Curry shoe, because at least I see him and it's cool, this is going to be something that's going to be important down the road, hopefully, maybe, and I'll want to have that story, whether it's for, writing down something about it down the road or passing along to the next generation.
I can see that. And if for those that are listening, if you haven't checked out our Jordan episodes. I'll put links to those down below. We talked about Jordan Retros and the Jordan Signature line. I actually did a 2-part series on that. So I'll link you guys back to that down in the description. So I'm going to put you guys on the spot, but I'll put myself on the spot first. So let's just rank right now, just from what you know, your top 3 shoes. I'll say for basketball shoes. For me, number 1 is the Jordan 29. It's just really comfortable. I really love playing in it. I think the upper is great. It feels soft. Feels like you've been playing in them for years just when you put them on once. Then after that, I'm going to go to the Kobe just because I love low cut shoes. And then my third pick is actually going to I shouldn't say drop. Is going to go to the Curry 1. I think Under Armour did a fantastic job with that shoe. The charge cushioning was great. It was just a good shoe all around. So now I'm going to toss this to Brandon. And from what I hear, you're killing rec leagues. I feel like your list should be kind of the top here. This is as good as you are in that rec league.
I'm so boring, actually. Last year, the only shoe that I really played in on a consistent basis from the newer models was the LeBron 12. Other than that, I still try and ball my answer twos as much as possible, and someday my foot's literally going to go through them because those aren't a retro kids. Those are from 1998. I'm still trying to hoop in those because I love them so much. Reebok, please bring them back the right way if you're out there listening. But other than that, the LeBron 12 was really good. I got a chance playing the Jordan 29s. I thought they were really good. And then I played in the Kyrie 1 once, and it was an unbelievable shoe. I thought they did a really good job with that. So, a lot of really good shoes out there last year. I think this coming up season, I'm really excited to see what the Curry 2 is going to do the most.
Yeah, for me, I definitely think, I'm looking forward to the Curry 2. I'm kind of looking forward. I'm always looking forward to the D Rose shoes just because I'm a big fan of his, and I think that it's a really underrated line overall. I think as far as playing, I really love the 28 SE, man. That shoe is it's almost unfair how much I like that shoe compared to anything else. But I also do like the Curry 1 quite a bit. And really, I don't know what next would be. That's tough. Probably the Hyper Rev. It's not like a signature model, but I think it's super underrated. It's just a simple, low cut, I'm not a Kobe fan, so I don't really go towards Kobe's very often. So the Hyper Rev is kind of like that. I'm not, the KD, didn't have the look that I like, I guess. So I think that would be the third one for me.
Yeah, good choice. Good choices. Good choices. Now, I've never played in any of the overseas stuff. Have either of you had any experience with any the Li-Nings or the Peaks or any of those stuff?
I've played in Li-Nings before. I definitely don't think they should be shunned the way they kind of seem to be. But I also have seen some Peak shoes. I've never played in a Peak shoe, but I've seen some Peak shoes where it's just why would anybody sign with this brand, So, I think, personally, a lot of that, and kind of going back to bringing up Starbury, possibly coming back with $15 shoes, he's obviously doing well over in China and is, slight step below God level. But to me, those shoes, it's all perception. And a lot of that comes from our wonderful American arrogance of thinking that they're not making quality product. Even though, a lot of the shoes that we buy here are still made in the same factories that probably Li-Ning and Peak shoes are.
Right. That's horrible. Well, I can tell you the reason those guys are wearing them is because they're paying them to wear them. And if Anta or Peak or Li-Ning came to me and then was like, hey, we want to make the Jacques BB, I'd be wearing those shoes because I need that check. How about you, Brandon? Have you had any experience in those?
I haven't had any experience with those personally myself, but just kind of going back on the whole Starbury thing and being endorsed to do it. If they just want to throw me 50 Starbury IDs, I'll wear nothing but Starburys for all 2016. I'm just gonna, I'm gonna be that guy. I'm gonna have those one-of-ones nobody else has, and I'll keep it real in the Starburys. I already got colorways in my mind too. I got the No Vaselines. Those are gonna be the first joints on. I'm gonna take it back to Minnesota Winners. Those will be good. I'm gonna do Coney Island joints. There's gonna be some hot stuff. Sometimes I got to get out of the basketball shoes, so I might throw some lugs on just to keep it 100 for the whole season. But the no Vaselines are going to do real well.
I think that'd probably be a pretty good marketing ploy for them.
Wow.
Like to get people paying attention.
That is hysterical.
Oh man!
And with that, you guys,
go
ahead.
Before we jump out, I was going to say, like, I think we should also acknowledge Brand Black has kind of made a pretty big play. Their price point is in that, like, they're not competing with the LeBron level. They're in that, I think, 120, 140 range. And really, like, everything I don't have a pair, but everything I've seen, all the reviews, all the, like Nightwing, Foamer, those guys, it seems like all enjoy that shoe.
Yeah. I've watched some of Nightwing's reviews on their stuff, and Nightwing seems to really enjoy playing in Brand Black. So shout out to them, and they're here in LA, and I didn't even mention them. So shout out to me for being an ass. Anyway, so just keep it 100 here. So you guys, this is Outside the Box, the podcast about sneakers and stuff, and it was all about basketball. So we want to know what you think about basketball. Were we right on some of the basketball stuff? Were we wrong? Was the commentary that Nick provided on God levels, was I completely in the wrong, and was Brandon right as always? So let us know. Use the hashtag Outside the Box. I am Jacques Slade. You can find me basically everywhere: Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, YouTube, all that stuff. It's all under Kustoo, which is Kustoo. Don't ask why it's spelled that way. Just the way that the good Lord intended it to be spelled. But I'm also here. Couldn't do this show by myself. The guys that really carry the show are Brandon and Nick. So Brandon, tell them where they can find you.
You guys can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Mr. Brando3, MrBrando3. And you can follow Nick. Nick, what's your handles?
Nick Engvall, NiceKengvall, and that's just across everything pretty much. So.
He's also on Tinder, ladies and gentlemen, in case you want to reach him there. Keep it.
I gotta diversify my dating apps. If anybody has any suggestions, leave the comments.
Yeah. All right, guys. Again, let us know. Honestly, we really love to hear feedback from you guys. We really love to hear the conversation. Keep the conversation going outside of this podcast, on whether you listen to it on YouTube or on SoundCloud. We definitely want to hear what you have to say. We want to make this a two-way conversation, not just us talking to you. We want to hear you guys talk to us. So let us know what you think. Hit us up. As always, we appreciate you, and we'll see you next week on the Outside the Box podcast.